Welcome back, everyone. The purpose of this video is solely because, in truth, I actually didn't feel good about the last video that I did. I just wasn't proud of it. I felt that it was too PowerPoint heavy, and that's not usually how I like to do these videos. And so I went back and I looked and I realized that there were some key things that probably I did a terrible job of explaining. So here I am on a Saturday morning at 5:15. It's bugging me that much that I decided to record, albeit a much shorter video, but a better example, more of a better lesson, because there's some key things that I really want to go through and explain again. And so what I've done is I've gone back to the Murac book, and I'm doing one of the examples in the Murac book because it's really going to help me highlight some things that I didn't talk about in the last video that I really think I should have. So in actuality, this is supplemental to the last video that I did, but in terms of practicality, I think this one will be better in terms of something that's applied to what I was talking about. So if you've watched that, thank you. If not, I hope that this video gives you a good applied sense of what that video was really about. And so I've opened up this form, and I'm calling it, this application is going to be called Future Value. And yes, it's right out of the book. But if you want, you can follow along because I'm going to build it right now in this video. Okay. So I've got it. I'm just running this in a debug without build. Basically this one here, start without debugging. That's what I've done. And I'm going to shut it off, and I'm going to go through and let's build out this whole app. So here I have my form, and I'm going to just start making a bunch of changes to the form. Okay, so I'm open here. I'm in my properties, and the first thing I'm going to do is change the text of this form, because right here it says form 1. I'm going to change this to future value. Okay, and with a space. Okay, because I don't like the name of that form. Now I do have a bunch of properties that I want to change on this as well. Okay, so if I stay on my form and I looked for some of the properties related to just the form, right? So you can see I don't have anything in it. So I just want to go and address some of the things for the form. So first off, I want, when this renders, I actually want it to be the starting position. I want to be in the center screen again. So I'll change this to center screen. And I have a couple other ones. And right up here, let's go to this accept button right here. And you can see right now it's set to none. That's okay. We're going to come back to that. And there's this cancel button. This is also set to none. Okay, but we will come back to those. So for now, what we need to do is put a series of labels and text boxes and a couple of buttons on there. Okay, so I'm going to code this up. I'm not going to talk, and I'll speed it up, but ultimately you're going to need monthly investment, yearly interest rate, number of years, and a future value calculation, and then two buttons, a calculate and an exit. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and do that, and I'll probably just speed up the camera when I do this. So I need a label and I need a text box. Okay, and I'll just do this. So now that I have all my labels done, I think what I want to do is center that just a little bit better. And I'm really just going to eyeball it for now. That's fine. This last box down here, I want to set this to read only. And I think for these, you can actually double click them and they'll flip over. And I want to go to tab stop for this one and set that to false. So I don't want it to tab to that button. So I think it's worth a little quick recap of what I've done is I've changed each and every one of these labels over here in the properties under name. And I've just added LBL, but I've stuck with their name. So this is LBL for label, monthly investment, LBL yearly interest rate, LBL number of years, and LBL future value. And of course, then I changed the actual text on the label. And then each one of these text boxes is prefixed with TXT and then monthly investment, TXT yearly interest rate, TXT number of years, and finally this TXT future value. And then the buttons are prefixed by BTN, so button calculate and button exit, so BTN exit. Okay, and then I've just reset this final one to read only. And then I changed my tab stop to false. Okay, so that's where I am right now with this. And I've also changed the name of the form itself. So there's something I want to go over with that maybe isn't overly clear to everyone yet, but I want to go and have a look at it right now. So this is where I want to be very clear about what's going on here with these text boxes. Okay, and so the very first text box that we have it's called our monthly investment. And this is true of all text boxes. And this is why I think it's worth kind of revisiting and really focusing in on the explanation of this. Everything that you type initially into a text box is a string of text. So in this case, you're seeing if I were to type in 100, this would be an actual string called 100. And so I type that into my monthly investment. And then the guts or the code, the background, what happens is we now have to take that string and convert it to something. And so you can see this monthly investment text box is referred to as txt monthly investment .text. So go get the text. Okay. And then the next piece of this, because I'm passing this, as you can see, I'm passing this right here, this text. That is my argument into my 2-decimal method. Okay. And what it's doing is it's calling the convert class here. And using the 2-decimal, I'm converting to a decimal from a string. Okay, and the result of that is now going to be a decimal number that I can use inside my code calculations. Okay, so the next thing is if you look at all of these, each and every one of these inputs that the user has, they're actually in fact typing a string. It doesn't matter if it's a number or it's a word or whatever. They're always typing a string. And then these methods get called on the text of those strings. Okay, and then they are converted. And you can see here, I've got 2-decimal for the first one, 2-decimal, and then this number of years, we're taking it from a string and we're converting it to to int 32. So we're converting it to an integer. And so we now reshape those inputs from the user. And in the end, what we're finally going to do, once we do all the calculation in the background, what we're going to do next is then convert that data type that we've done the calculation on in the code. We're going to convert that back to a string, right? And so the output that the user is going to see is eventually going to become a string again. So we start as a string, and any output or resulting output that we want or return value that we want is going to always result in being displayed to the user as a string again inside that text box. Okay, so what you always see displayed inside a text box is always a string. So if you had any doubts about that before, I hope it's a little bit more clear. So let's go back into Visual Studio, because now I want to get into coding all of that functionality. Okay. So now that I have built this thing out, the one thing I do want to do is just do a really quick start without debugging, just to make sure I don't have any more issues before I continue on. Okay, everything looks good, but I do have to go in and reset the center value of my form, because I did go in and do some modifications on here just to line things up a little nicer, and I must have changed my center screen start. So I'll save that. So I'm happy with that now. And so now what I really want to do is go in and talk about these different files that we've been working with. So far you're not seeing, the actual C# file in the background. All we're seeing is this, this design form, right? And so the quick and easiest way to turn that file on is, and I think they do this intentionally, because until we click one of the buttons or one of the text boxes or whatever, until we do something where we need to create code that is going to generate an event, we don't really see that code, right? So that's why it's not displayed over here. So what I want to do is right away, I think probably go to calculate. And when I go to calculate and I double click, you can see that this file opens up here. Okay. And you're wondering, where is it over here? For now, just don't worry about it for now. But let's talk about what's happening here, because I want to open up program.cs as well. Okay. And you're seeing this line here. It's called new form 1. And it's really referring to, this is really running a version of the form. Okay, and the code for this in the background, if we look at this, we're saying this is sort of the class that we want to run this in. And we're actually initializing the form. This is the code that says, okay, as soon as this thing starts, open up this form and display this form to the user. Okay, so there's this relationship right here with here. Okay, and we'll come back to that, because in the future, we're not only going to have a single form. And so suppose we actually want a different form on startup. So we'll have to come back and make a modification to this line to tell it, which form do you want me to actually start? Okay, so if I'm in here, you see what is happening here. I have my click. Okay, that is the name of the function. And this is referring to the actual button itself. Okay, so there's an object here and a relationship to its method. So these are these special methods that refer to the actual button. Okay, so this code is really talking about the class form1. So overall, we're in the Form 1 class. Okay, this is just a method that is happening inside the form, and it's happening on one of the buttons. Okay, so let's go in and start just coding what's happening here. Okay, so if we go back to the form, what we're seeing is we have our monthly investment, our yearly interest rate, and the number of years. And we need to take all of that information, do some calculation, and then return to the user an output for what the future value is going to be. And we'll get the future value once this button is clicked. This calculate button is clicked. Okay. And so when we go to this code here, you can see that it created the template for that whole thing to happen. Okay, so let's say that was a mistake. That's a mistake to me. So I don't want to do that. And I delete this. Okay, and I'm going to just save that. And I'm going to go to my error list. And you see here that I'm getting this error right away. Okay, and it says Form 1 does not contain a definition for button calculate click. And so what I want to do now is go to double click on this error here. And this opens up another file for me. Okay. And this file is actually this one right here. Okay, which is separate. You can see that there's the square brackets and you see I'm getting this error. Don't worry, we're going to clear that. But when I go to here, I've got the square brackets. That's our form. Okay. But right here in our Solution Explorer, if I click on this, I double click it, this is the actual what we refer to as wiring. Okay. And I'm going to come back to a couple of things in here. But first, I want you to notice that it is calling this line 118. So 118 is where I'm getting the error, and you can see that that is the error of what is happening. Okay, so what I want to do just to clear that up really quick is I would like to go back here and do an undo just to clear that error. Okay, and it cleared the error, and now I want to go back here and talk about what's happening here. And if we actually go in and then in our design view and we look at the form, okay, all of these items, these labels and these buttons and all of that stuff, let me put them together because you can move those around. All of these buttons and these things here, they're all objects, right? They're all objects, and all of those objects have all these properties over here, what you see in this window. And if we look at text, it says yearly interest rate. So let's go back to here, and I'm gonna look at all of these different labels. Okay, and so you see here, there's a code comment to tell you what's happening. And it uses this keyword this. And so this particular file is in itself a special file that is referring to each and every one of those objects that we've put onto the screen. Okay, so when we go to this first one here, yearly interest rate, let's go to the top one. So what does it say in the design? Monthly investment. So let's go to monthly investment right here. And you can see that it's using the keyword this. It's saying, hey, this label. It's got the name of the label, and it's referring to the actual text. Okay, and then text is what we've typed in here. So I can go in and I can manipulate this. I can put number signs in there and I can change that, right? And I'll save it. Now, let's go back to this designer, and you can see that that label updated, and you can see that it actually updated over here. Okay, so there's this connection to this particular file. Okay, and so it's important you understand that there are several files that are happening. So when you make changes, okay, so here in this particular file is where we're going to write the code. This is what we're going to implement. Okay, we're implementing this particular code on these objects. Okay, and so there is a special relationship between the two that you have to understand. Okay, and all of those properties that we set inside this box here for the form, they are all reflected in each one. So everything that we have set right now, auto size true, location, you know, where it appears actually in space on the form is at pixel 9178. So if I change the location, these numbers will change. If I change their size, it will change. And you can see here that my label, this is my label, and this is my text. Okay, so this is where all of this stuff is located. So I'm going to close that. And so everything that you want to hard code can be manipulated in that particular file. And it can also, you can use the properties. And for the most part, we want to be setting these things inside the properties. Okay, so it's important that you understand that in the code world, there's a relationship and there's an actual file that does a lot of this for us. This is how we're referring to it. Okay, so this is the graphical representation of this particular file right here. Okay, so I hope that's a little more clear. I think now it's time to start coding this up. And so the first thing that we have is our monthly investment. So I need to handle the first input is our monthly investment. So this is going to be a decimal. Okay, it'll be a decimal value, monthly investment. Now notice this is the first time I'm seeing this variable. And so I'm just kind of sticking to this convention. Okay, it's not BTN or LBL or something. This is a variable inside my code, and that's why I'm referring to it this way. This is the first time my code is seeing this particular variable. And, you know, a good habit, to be quite honest, is I think to start on the right-hand side and figure out what you want to do. So the first thing I want to do is convert, okay, a 2 decimal. Okay, because like I said earlier, I have a string. I'm receiving a string and I want to convert that to a decimal. And so this TXT, and you see they pop up with the IntelliSense, is my monthly investment. And I know that that is a text. Okay, and I'll finish that with a semicolon. But now that I'm converting that, what do I want to do? I want to be able to put it into something that is useful. So this is why I think, you know, do the work on the right side, and then on the left side, just assign the result to something. So I know that I want this to be a decimal, and this is why I'll say monthly investment. And I'll use a camel case for this. So you can see I've done all of this, and now I'm assigning it to this monthly investment. So in all honesty, this monthly investment variable now was a string, but I'm converting it into a decimal. And now monthly investment, no matter what I type into the input, the user input, that will initialize monthly investment to whatever it is I type it into. And it will simultaneously do the conversion from a string to a decimal. Okay, so that's how that works. All right, so the next thing I want to do is I want to convert again to a decimal again, and this is what my TXT, and what's left, interest rate. I want to do my yearly interest rate. Okay, and of course that's text, so I want to do that, and now I need to assign it to something. And so I know, okay, so I want it to be a decimal, and it's going to be yearly interest rate, and I just assign it. So I'm good there. Now I've got another one. I've got years. Okay, and so I'm going to say convert dot to, in this case, it's int32. This is what I'm using for my integers. I want to convert a string to an integer. and this is txt number of years, and it is text. Do my semicolon, and now what do I want to assign it to? Right? I need to give it something to assign it to, and this is where this int comes in. Int, we're just gonna call it, number of years to keep everything nice and clean. And I'll stick with my camel case and just assign it. Okay, so right now all we've done is like what I showed you in the slides. At this point, I'm just converting. That's it. Now I can forget everything I need to know about strings and focus on the variables itself. Okay, so right off the bat, what I want to do is this month. I need an int month, and month is going to be years, my number of years, and you can see it pops up now because it exists, and I'm going to multiply that by 12. Okay, because I'm going to need that for a future calculation. So then I need decimal, monthly interest rate. Now, how do I create that monthly interest rate? And so I'll do this, and then what's the calculation I want to do for monthly interest rate? And it is simply just yearly interest rate. Okay, yearly interest rate, and it's going to be divided by 12 and then divided by 100. Okay, simple calculation for that. And the last thing I want to do is this decimal, and I'm going to call it future value. And stick with camel case. Future value. And this is just going to be initialized to 0 right off the bat, okay? Right now I just want it to be, because I'm going to be doing a calculation, but I need to start it off at 0, do the calculation, and then change this, reassign it to the result of a calculation that I want to do. Okay, and so now I'm going to just do a little simple for loop, and I'll scroll down a little, give you some more screen size. So let's say for, and this is just normal for loop, int I. Okay, we're going to start with an int I, and we'll assign that to 0, and then it will be I is less than month. Less than month, or months. Sorry, you know what? Maybe let's change. Change this to S. Okay, so this will be an S, less than month. And then I'm going to increment this. Okay, so a semicolon and then I plus plus. It's just a straight old vanilla for loop. And I like to use the space with my brackets. I really do. I like very clean code. And this is going to be future value is going to be equal to, and this again is where I should have probably written, I should do it this way, just to be consistent. I want to focus on the code that I want to do. So future value plus the monthly investment. Okay. And outside of that, I want to multiply this by another value. So I'm just doing two calculations, and I'm using, just straight old math converted into programming, and plus the monthly interest rate. Okay, and then do that. So this is the calculation that I want to do, right? And that's where I now want to go in and assign it to future value. And that's that. Okay, so it starts off at 0, and then inside the for loop as we go through, do this calculation and then assign that value to that. Okay, so that's pretty much it. Now, the next thing we have to do is start figuring out our text. Okay, because we have had strings, we've converted it. Then based on those conversions, we've gone to actual data types that are appropriate for doing calculations. We have a result, but now we need to put that result back into a string format so that we can then place it on in our text box for the user to see. So this is going to be txt, and it's future value, okay, dot text. And you can see that we're going in the next direction. We're going in the opposite direction to what we've done now, okay, because text was on this side of the equation, but now we're putting text on the other side of this equation. So this future value, okay, this, let's see, future value, if I can click on this, dot toString, and you can see that it popped up in the IntelliSense toString. And inside the toString, now what I want to do is not add something. I want to just put this into a currency. I want to put what format that I want it to be in. Okay, and then I'll go down to the next line, and it's going to be txt, and I want my monthly investment to be what I focus on. Okay, and what this means with this focus is highlight, when I turn it on, highlight the cursor onto this, to this block of code right here. Okay, so let's save this. I don't see any errors. Okay, and I'm going to do a quick build of the solution and just once again confirm there's no errors. Yep, no failures. And then I'm just going to run it without without debugging. So start without debugging. And you can see it pops up. I'm going to type in 100, interest rate 5, number of years, let's say 20, and then calculate. And so you see that the output is in the currency because we said to do it with a T. It is in a decimal form, right, for currency, and the formatting is all there. So that functionality all works. The last thing I've got to do is my exit button. And for now, I can use this. Okay, so that's really good. Now, let's go back to the form. Okay, and I can do it this way if I want to. And I think this is the smartest way you can do it. I strongly advise you don't go into here and start trying to hard code these function definitions. Okay, I think it's a terrible idea, and I'll tell you why. Is because if you allow Visual Studio to do it for you by double clicking, what it does is it sends information, it wires information over to this form here, or to this file. Okay, and if you don't understand how to, okay, maybe not this file, there's actually a different file as well, but and we'll talk about that one, I hope, soon in this video as well. But allow it to create the connections to various different files. And that's really what I'm trying to get at. If I go in and I hard code it right here, then that code in that functionality only exists in here. They don't exist elsewhere. And it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to connect back to here. So the smartest thing to do is let Visual Studio do the work for you. So if I double click that, it takes me right back to this file. You can see there's my last line of code, and it creates this, and you can see this word right here. It says references 1. It's got one reference. And when I click on it, you can see that it's this form1 designer.cs. Okay, so there is a one reference to this. And that's what this is meaning as well, is that there's one reference. But look at this one. If I click on this, it has two references to this form.cs and form1.designer.cs. Okay, so there's two references to this, two other files that it's accessing. So let Visual Studio do that heavy lifting for you. And of course, this one is just this. Okay, what we're referring to when we say this, it is this, we're saying this button, okay, this button, which is this one right here, this button is going to close the window, okay? We're going to use this event to close this window, okay? And this is the easiest one you're ever going to do, is just close, okay? And that is the easiest method call we are going to do throughout this entire course. So save. Now, if I go ahead and I start without debugging again, and I exit, it goes away. Perfect. Okay. So we've got that as a framework. I hope you are following along because we're going to make modifications. I want to show you about something called refactoring. Okay. So let's continue. So there's this idea of refactoring, and it's a really interesting thing, and it supports code reusability. Okay. And let's say, for example, I want to take this calculation that we have done, and instead of having it done this way, it's a one-time use. Maybe I want this calculation to be done, and I want to call this function many other times in the future, as an example. So what I can do is I highlight it. Now I can do a combination of control and hit period. Okay, or I can highlight it, right click, and do this quick actions. You see where the light bulb is, and that's also the control period. But it's quick actions and refactoring. And so you can see here that I'm getting this window, and what'll happen is it's going to create this new function for me, or new method for me. Okay. And so I'm going to do this extract new method. And of course, I don't like the name of this. Okay. So I have to rename this method. And the way I'm going to do that, I'm going to actually call this one calculate future value. So calculate future value. Okay. And I just start to type it in. And you can see something that's happening. Everything that was associated with future value is now being retyped. So, then I'm just going to hit apply. And there's a couple of things to notice here. One, the original code that I had is still here. Okay. And this is now a new method call. It's a new method altogether, in fact. And you can see a couple of things that happened. It has passed in, it's created my parameter list. Okay. All three of my parameter lists. It has done the original calculation that I have done. And now it has created this return value of future value. Okay. Because previous to that, I didn't have it saying return future value. And then it has this one little difference here, this static. Okay, this static method is put in there. And now I would suggest to you that maybe you do leave that. You can take it out, but it'll have an impact on how it's referred to in the future, okay? My recommendation is, though, that you leave the keyword static. Just leave it alone, okay? And what's really happened here? Nothing has changed with my code at all. It is still doing all of the calculations. It's still passing the inputs as arguments into these new parameters that is created. It's still going through the for loop, and it is still returning a value to me. And that value is still being calculated. Now, if you look at it, if we go back up to here, it automatically set the conditions for it to be called. Okay, because remember here, we did all this calculation first, previous to refactoring, and then we assigned it to future value. And future value is where we started to modify that text box, and we converted it back to a string, and we gave it its formatting. But here, when we refactored, it did all of that heavy lifting for us, and then it just assigned the result of that new method call to future value. So if you're looking at some point in the future of calculating the future value, if you ever update this, now you have a method call that you can rely on. Okay, so I think that's extremely powerful and extremely important. And I suppose I do want to just touch on this idea one more time about static. If I'm using this static word, then I won't be able to refer to this using the keyword this. That's really the only difference. So this is why I kind of say just leave it alone. It's just a normal method call. But if you're having a problem in the future trying to call this method doing this dot whatever, so if you see what's happening here for the close method, I'm using this dot close. You won't be able to do that if you have the keyword static. So that's just kind of a caution right now. But I really do think you just leave it alone as is. What I want to do now is come back to this idea that I touched on in the last video of events. And if you see that we've typically been in this area here, the properties, well, the events is this little lightning bolt over here. And so you can see that I've clicked on the first text box for monthly investment. And these are all different events. Okay, and that's really what these are. And there are many, many different events that are going on. Okay, so if I'm looking down here, this text changed, and I click on it, and you can see that there's this BTN calculate click or BTN exit click. Okay, so what it's saying is when the text has been changed, I could set that to calculate click. Okay, I'm not going to do that though. We'll look at different things here. But what's really important to say is that these are the events that have a response associated with them. And if you look at each and every one of these events, you'll see as we drop down each one of these, this list of potential events are available, or actions that are associated with the clicking or the doing of an event. And in this particular case, this event is a click. So the user clicks something and it triggers an action. Okay. And so there's an actual difference between an event and an event handler. Okay. And one is the event. The user clicks a button. That's the event. And then there's this idea of then what? You've clicked the button, so what? Well, now we have to handle the action of that user, and that action was to click that button. So how do we handle that now? And so that's why we have to wire these events to the event handling. So I have to wire the click of this button to an actual function somewhere. Okay, so there's a couple of things going on. There's the actual wire is the connection that gets the button to the output function. Okay, and so the event handler is the function or the method that we create to handle that. So you can see that I'm on the text box here for monthly investment. And over here, I've got validated and validating. Okay, there's a distinction validating here. So if I double click on this, the event for the monthly investment text box, we're going to see an event handler kind of get generated. Okay, so I clicked on that, and let me go back to that window if I can. I'm back here, and I go to here, and you see what happened. And let me just scroll over. I double clicked on validating, and you can see it says text monthly investment underscore validating. Okay, so that's what happened. Now, if I go back to the code right under my button click, you can see that this is what's happening. Okay, I've got that relationship that is getting set up this way. Okay. So like I said before, when we look at these events, I think the book says that there are 60 events for a text box alone, and then 80 events for just the form. Okay, so that's a lot. That's a lot of capability. But in reality, we're not going to use that many. Okay. So just something to be aware of, though, is that if you do actually delete an event handler, you'll need to delete any statements that wire events to that particular event handler. So much like when we did this before, I think in this file where we double clicked on the button and then we tried to delete it. It's the same sort of thing that happens with this same method here. It's referring to other files. So if you try to delete it, you're going to get the error in the same way. So I'm actually going to go in and just delete this. Okay, and obviously I'm going to get an error down in my error list, and I can go searching for it if I choose to, right in here. But it says it's on line 59. And there it is. So let me take out this line, delete, and my error clears. So another thing that I can do, because let's say I don't have an event already in there and I've got these two options, I don't like them, and I want to create my own sort of custom one, because when we did validating, I just double clicked on it and it created its own. But what I can do is I can go to this window and say clear future, is it future value? Yeah, future value. I can create this one and then hit enter. And you can see that it created this custom one that I want to use. And so that's pretty powerful. And the reason is why it's, what makes it powerful is I'm actually going to show you how to use this now that I've created it. But first I need to go in and actually implement the code that I want to have for this. And so this one is just going to be text. And if you look at this here, our future value is all I need. So I'll select that text future value dot txt. And I'm going to set this to really just an empty string. That's it. Okay, so that is clearing any text in my future value. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and save that. Now, when I go back to my designer and I want to use this, if you look at this drop down now I have 3 different events. I have 2 that were kind of auto generated for me, and I have 1 now that I'm custom creating, which is pretty good. So what's really good about this though is that I can go to each and every one of these text boxes now, and I go to text changed and I drop that down and I say clear future value. And let me do it one more time. Text changed, clear future value. Okay, so each time I go on there, you see that I've set it to this event here. Okay, and what does that really mean? Well, it means that as I type in if I make any changes to this, so for example, if I change the number of years, it is going to end up updating the future value. So right away, I want to clear that future value text box. Okay, so let me save that and I'll show you what I mean. So I'll do 100, 5%, and then number of years, we'll say 20, and we'll do calculate. Okay, so now we've got this value that's in here, but I want to update this now to $1,000, and you see that my future value changed. Okay, and I put it back, it stays changed. So I do a calculation, I've got much more. Now I change this to 6%, and you see that future value is no longer valid. Okay, so each time I do this, 25, it's clearing. Okay, and so that's really what we're able to do with these event handlers. We can use the sort of factory built-in ones, and we can also create really good, useful custom ones for ourselves as well. So there's another thing I want to just really quickly show you is that when we go back to the code where this all exists, you can see that our text box for monthly investment, you can see that there's this new event handler right here. Okay, and this actually does refer to something called a delegate, but if you've got the book or access to the book, go ahead and read about that. But what's interesting is we've got this plus equals new system event handler, and it's using the keyword this, and then the clear future value. Okay, so it's a little bit of a different syntax because we've done this with customization, which is slightly different. And when we contrast that to, say, let's see, the button here, it's not really different. Okay, like the syntax here is really the same. One was just custom and one was sort of generated for us. Okay, so these are really, really useful things to know about. So for the time being, I think I'm happy with this sort of updated video, or this supplemental video to the last one. And I do apologize if you suffered through the last one and you just didn't feel like you were getting a complete meal. Okay, that maybe your dessert was left out, and I hope that this video here is sort of served as that. Anyway, you know, at the end of the day, maybe even if you were to watch this one, and just this one, and even not the last one, you'd probably be okay too. So this one is meant to complement the other one, but that one was much more slide heavy. This one is more code heavy. So anyway, I do want to thank you for watching this one, and I will see you in the next video when we talk about working with forms and different controls. And I also want to start getting into multiple forms. So not just one single form like we've been using. I want to start getting into multiple forms, list boxes, drop-down boxes, radio buttons, group boxes, and check boxes. Okay, so there'll be a lot in the next one, but I'm going to try and keep that one more code heavy as well. Okay, so again, thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.